Hello and welcome back to another build video. In today's video we're gonna check out my Shaman Wolf cast on crit Comet build. So the concept of this build is to combine attacks and spells. And how do we do that? So first of all, in the Shaman Ascendancy we have Druidic Champion. So every 2 rage also grants us 1% more spell damage. On top of that we use Mystical Rage from the passive tree. So every rage also grants us 2% increased spell damage. And on top of this, we also use Crown of Ice unique helmet. And all the increases we get to spell damage is also applied to attack damage. So these 3 synergizes really well. And as you guys can see, the build is performing very smoothly. So the build is honestly the most fun I've had in the game so far. It just feels really nice to play it. The gameplay is snappy, it's fast, it looks good, and pretty damn strong. So I'm pretty happy how it turned out, and I'm gonna leave you guys to watch the rest of the map here, and then we're gonna deep dive into it. So let's get into the build. First up, we have Shred. Shred is the basic attack of the wolf shapeshifting form. So here we use rapid attacks 2, we use Rigwald's Ferocity, we use Rage 3, we use Pinpoint Critical, and we use Blazing Critical. Rigwald's Ferocity, you need to make sure you have this in weapon set 1, so we get attack speed bonus. And why do we use Rage? Well, we scale our spell damage, which is going to be the Comets, through having a lot of Rage. So wherever we can, we want to make sure that we gain Rage. Since all our skills actually cost Rage as well, we want to make sure we have a high uptime on as much Rage as we can, so we have as much damage as we can on the Comets. Pinpoint Critical is basically so we get more crit chance, so we can trigger cast on crit more often. Blazing Critical is a buff we get for 5 seconds whenever we critical a hit with the skill, and we get 15% of damage as fire damage. Then we have Lunar Assault. Lunar Assault is a very good skill, mainly because it has insane amount of freeze build-up, also have pretty good AoE. So this is our main mapping skill. In here we have Beitar's Vengeance, so whenever we freeze a target with Lunar Assault, for every 1 rage we have, we also get 1% of damage as cold damage for 20 seconds. So whenever we have, let's say max rage now, 73, and we proc this skill, we're gonna have 71% of damage as cold damage. Once again we use rage 3. We have Tull's Stillness. So chaos damage from hits with supported skills also contribute to freeze buildup. And the supported skill gain 40% of cold damage as extra chaos. So this is extra damage and better freeze buildup. We also use Rakiata's Flow, so we invert elemental resistances. This is gonna increase the damage and also freeze faster, since they're not gonna have any cold resistance. We use Garrican's Resolve, and I wouldn't say this is mandatory for the build to work at all. I got it as a drop and wanted to play around with it. Basically what this does is that your crit chance is capped to 50%, and you have a chance to reroll your damage instance two times. If both of those are critical hits, then you're gonna have a bonus to your crit damage. So basically double your crit damage, if I remember correctly. Yes, your crit damage gets applied twice. So pretty damn good, but more on the expensive side, and if you don't have it, don't bother. We have Lunar Blessing, and this is a war cry. Honestly, one of the better buff skills in the game. So you get 74% of damage as cold damage during this buff duration. And you can extend the buff duration by spending Rage. So you see now we are at max rage. Whenever we use this, we have a 21 second buff duration on this. And for the support gems here, we use prolonged duration 2 to extend the duration. We use cooldown recovery 2. And why do we do that? Well, first of all, to reduce the Warcry cooldown, obviously. But Lunar Blessing has another component to it, which is insanely good. And that is the moonbeams. So the moonbeams can get triggered 1 time per second. And as you can see here, we are at 0.77 seconds. And that is because of the cooldown support gem. Otherwise we would have been at 1 second. And we basically trigger 2.36 attacks per 0.77 seconds. Another cool thing with the Lunar Blessing moonbeams is that they can trigger cost on crit. So they help us to, or the skill helps us to get more damage through the buff. It also helps us to do damage through the moonbeams. And it also helps us trigger cost on crit comets for even more damage. So Lunar Blessing is an insane skill. We also use efficiency 2 here, and that is because the blessing itself actually costs rage. With efficiency 2, it costs 5 rage, otherwise it would have been 10 rage. And we want to keep our rage as high as possible when we trigger this, and also during any form of gameplay, since we scale our spell damage that way. We use pinpoint crit, so it has a higher crit chance, since it can trigger cost on crit. We use rage 2 here, so the moonbeams from Lunar Blessing actually counts as melee hits. So every time they hit, we're gonna get 5 rage. Then we have cost on crit. In here, we run Comet. We use Spell Cascade, we use Boundless Energy 2, Pinpoint Critical, and Diala's Desire. And fun thing, or fun and fun, but good thing to know, is that the Comets themselves also cost rage. Because the way we have spec'd into the Ascendancy in the Shaman, we basically have a rage cost on all the skills. And as much as we trigger comets, as you saw in the gameplay in the beginning of the video, it costs a lot of rage. Plus all the skills we use, they cost rage, so having means of getting the rage back is very important for the build. And we have Ferocious Roar, and this is another war cry. In here we use Raging Cry. So, supported skills grants us 4 rage per 5 power of counted enemies in range. So, basically what we do, like the rotation that we do, is that when we are on full rage, we pop Lunar Blessing, so we get maximum duration and all the damage buffs. And as you can see, when we trigger this, all the rage goes down. And the passive regen of the rage is kinda slow. So let's say we would have attacked at the same time here. We don't really get the rage back, as you can see. So that means we want to get it back as fast as possible, right? So we use Ferocious Roar with Raging Cry. So whenever we have a bunch of enemies around us, we pop this, we're gonna be at full rage immediately. And the same concept goes for boss fights. So for bosses, we go in, we trigger our Lunar Blessing for the buff duration, the moonbeams, but we lose all the rage. Boom, we pop Ferocious Roar, we're at max rage again, and can start doing all the damage. We also use Magnified Area 2 here, so we have increased area of effect, so we can basically during mapping hit more enemies with the Raging Cry, so we get more rage. We use Tireless, and this is so we have a 25% chance to not count attacks as being empowered. We use Cooldown Recovery 2, so we can use the Ferocious Roar more often. And once again we use efficiency here, so we don't have to spend as much rage when we use it. And then we have Pounce. So Pounce is our main movement skill throughout mapping, but it's also a really important skill for bosses. And why is that? We apply marks with Pounce. So freezing mark here, hits against marked enemies cause 54% more freeze buildup, so we basically freeze faster. And then marked enemy becomes frozen when hit while primed for freeze, which is actually like earlier than a regular freeze would have occurred. And we also get a buff with 30% of damage as cold damage for 10 seconds. We use Mark for Death as well, so we break the armor of the boss, we use Mark of Siphoning. The build is pretty mana hungry, I would say. Especially with the proc rate of the comets and everything, and the fast attack speed that we have. We have had pretty hard time to sustain the mana until we figured it out. So for bosses, we use Mark of Siphoning here, so we get some leech. We have Holy Descent, and this makes us create a consecrated ground for 4 seconds when we land on the pounce, which is basically gonna give us a life regeneration. And then we use cooldown recovery too, so we actually can use pounce more often. Then we have Herald of Ice. So Herald of Ice, we have Osin's Oath in. So Mana Leech from supported skills recovers based on elemental damage types instead of physical damage. Since most of our skills actually convert a big portion of our physical damage into cold, which is an elemental, this is a good way to sustain the mana throughout mapping. We use Magnified Area 2, Elemental Armament 2, Pinpoint Crit. We use Cool Headed. And Cool Headed, I can highly recommend this if you have some spare spirit, because you have 50% less ignite duration. We all know that the Burning Round is pretty damn dangerous, and when you have Cool Headed, you can literally stand in the Burning Round for a pretty long duration without having to worry about dying or taking too much damage. We have Mana Remnants, and I wouldn't say this is kind of like needed for the mana sustain. It feels good, but the amount of leech we have actually sustains us. So the main reason we use Mana Remnants is obviously for the mana sustain, but for Catal's rejuvenation. So whenever our Remnant is created, which is getting created from Mana Remnant, we get Catal's rejuvenation, and this gives us increased cooldown recovery rate per stack. And we have a few skills with cooldown. So first of all, we have Lunar Blessing, we have Ferocious Roar, and Pounce. All of those have cooldowns, and with this we reduce the cooldown quite drastically, so we can use them more often. I also have Arctic Howl here. To be completely honest, I never use this. But if you feel like you want or need a little bit of a better damage increase, you can use Arctic Howl. This is going to give you flat cold damage to attacks, and also like empower attacks to even more flat damage. I never felt like I need this, so that is why I don't use it, but I have it slotted in because it is pretty good. So for this one we use Prolonged Duration 2, Raging Cry, Efficiency 2, and Cooldown Recovery 2. And I also have Wolfpack slotted in here. Reason for that is, if you have like spare spirit from body armor, amulet, whatever it might be, Wolfpack is a pretty good skill for that, because you get a bunch of wolves, you can use loyalty support gem with them. So 10% of damage from hits is taken from your companion's life before you. So it's basically a 10% damage reduction. And when you use Brutus Brain with this, your minions cannot actually die. So 100% uptime on 10% damage reduction, which might not seem like much, but it's better than none, right? Reason why I don't have this activated is because I don't have the spirit for it. And this is it for the support gems. Let's get into the gear. We obviously use a talisman, otherwise we wouldn't have been able to shapeshift. And I would say the most important things to look out for on your talisman is going to be obviously +5 to all attack skills, or melee skills would also have worked in this case. You want the base type of Magi talisman, so you get increased to maximum rage, preferably 12, but 8 is pretty good as well. You want as high crit chance as you can get. Attack speed, not needed, but feels really good to have. And then obviously either high physical damage, you can also go basically 0 physical damage and all in on elemental damage. I was trying that for a long time and it felt really good as well. But when I actually wanted to start to like min-max the build more, I went into the physical damage talisman instead. But if you want to get a little bit cheaper, go for elemental damage. That works fine. And for the helmet, which I mentioned in the intro, is Crown of Ice. reason for Crown of Ice is that we actually scale spell damage through our Ascendancy and our passive tree, and the Crown of Ice basically makes that spell damage also apply to our attacks. So we basically double dip into scaling with this helmet, and the stats on it are pretty bad. I wouldn't say there is anything specific here that you need to look out for, except for a corruption. You want a corruption with spirit here to be able to fit in all the spirit gems. You can fit them in if you get a corruption with spirit on your amulet, or if you use a different body armor. I will show that in a second here. But it's pretty important that you get as much spirit as we have here. We have 161 total spirit to make sure we can fit in all the spirit gems. And we also slot in the Soul Core of Ferocity for another +4 to max rage. And then we have the body armor. So I've been playing around with many different body armors, but I came to the conclusion that this one actually feels the best, because we get chaos resistance, we get all resistances, and we get max life. As you guys can see down here, we only have 1000 energy shield, which is not a lot, right? So our main defenses of the build is going to be our actual life pool, which is 2.5k, which isn't that much either, but we are gonna have a few ways of offsetting the damage that we take, that I will get into very soon. But for the body armor, you can have spirit on the body armor here instead, which would result in you not having a corruption with spirit on your Crown of Ice. As long as you have capped your resistances, that is gonna be fine. You can actually go without the max life here as well if you want spirit there. So it's gonna be up to you. I prefer this setup here. For the rings, you want as much flat damage as you can get. So here we have fire and cold. You want to make sure you cap your resistances. And you also want some leech. So leech as mana. As I mentioned previously, the build is very mana hungry, especially during boss fights. So having some sort of leech feels really good, so you don't have to pop your mana flask all the time. The second ring here, same thing, as much flat damage as you can get, resistances. We also have leech here, but I wouldn't say it's mandatory to have leech on both your rings, but at least get it on one of them. And for the gloves, we use Sine Acquiu, something like that. What these gloves do is that enemies immobilized by you take 24% more damage. And immobilized, well, what is immobilized? It's frozen, pinned, heavy stunned, or electrocuted. Basically everything that can't make them move. And in our case, we freeze all the time, so that is a 24% more damage taken. And immobilize enemies at 55% build-up instead of 100%, which means that we freeze enemies at 55% instead of 100. So really, really good. Plus, we get increased skill speed, which always feel good to, you know, attack faster, basically. For the boots, we basically want high movement speed, resistances, max life, and as high energy shield as you can get. If you can get rarity as well, that would be nice. Rarity is always good. For the belt, in this build we use a headhunter. And I wouldn't say this is like mandatory either. I prefer headhunter on this build, to be honest. On some builds I don't like it, but on this build specifically it feels really good. So whatever belt you want to use that, but I can actually recommend headhunter for this. It feels really nice. And for the amulet, this is an interesting one. We use Defiance of Destiny. And what does this do? We recover 36% of our missing life before being hit by an enemy. We also get increased mana regen and max life. So what does this mean? Well, I will show you. So the way Defiance of Destiny works is that you take damage, and whenever you lost life and take another damage instance, you actually recover life before you get hit. And that is the reason you see us here being able to actually sustain our life, even though we get hit multiple times. We also have bleeding debuff, we are shocked, we have broken armor, basically everything that, generally speaking, would have killed us. is not killing us this time. And you see the dark red health bar right here. That is actually the Amanamo jewel that I will get into whenever we go over the jewels in the build. But yeah, generally speaking, Destiny of Defiance is really, really good to survive a lot of small hits if you get surrounded, if you get knocked down, or in this case, if you need to pop your war cries in the middle of a breach. And as you can see here, we are basically surviving with no issues. Whenever you pop a war cry, you are a bit vulnerable. You stand still for a bit of a time, and if you have a lot of enemies around you, they will definitely hit you. And I felt that whenever that was happening, that was basically the only times I died. So Defiance of Destiny helps with that, like, insanely good. You are almost borderline immortal in a breach with this. So yeah, Defiance of Destiny. And on this one, you want to have max on the recover life here. Whenever you use Life Catalyst, that is going to go from 30 to 36. And the higher max life you can get as well, the better. And we instill Cooked here for increased critical damage bonus. And for boss fights, Defiance of Destiny is not really going to help you with anything. As I mentioned, like big hits don't do... Like, it doesn't work with big hits, only small hits. So for boss fights, you would want to use something like this. You want plus to all spell skills. Why spell skills? Well, Comets. You want increased crit damage bonus. Everything else is like personal preference. I go for max life, life regen, I don't know, could have been something else. And max energy shield. But yeah, the most important is spell damage and spell skills and crit damage. Same thing here, we allocate Cooked. So bosses we use Rare Amulet, mapping we use Defiance of Destiny. And that is it for the gear. Let's take a look at the passive tree. So we are a Shaman, and the reason for that, well, I mentioned it in the intro, but we have Druidic Champion. So every 2 rage also grants us 1% more spell damage. We also go up to Furious Wellspring, so we have no inherent loss of rage. We regen rage per second, and we can increase that by scaling mana regen, which we don't really do. We also have a skill cost, a rage cost of every skill, and we have another +7 to max rage here. So the reason we want to have rage on pretty much all the skills to be able to gain the rage back is because all our skills have a rage cost. And the no inherent loss of rage feels pretty good, because whenever you have basically cleared a map, you walk into a boss room, you're gonna be at max rage, you're gonna pop your Lunar Blessing, spending all the rage, then you pop Ferocious Roar, getting all the rage back, and then you are good to go to kill the boss. We're also going to go down to Reactive Growth, so we get 10% less elemental damage taken, and we also get adaptions that is going to reduce the elemental damage taken, depending on which matching adaption that we have. And we also go for Sacred Flow, and once again, that I mentioned earlier, if you use another body armor with more spirit on it, you might not need Sacred Flow, but in my case here, I need it to fit in all the spirit gems. So we basically sacrifice 1 charm slot for +40 to spirit. If you don't have, or if you have more spirit than me, I would drop this and go for Wisdom of Magi, so you gain the benefits of bond and modifiers. That is gonna give you some good benefits from all the runes and idols. And for the passive tree, we are going all the way up here for some increased damage and continue in the middle path here. We path off slightly here for some increased crit chance and skill speed. Go up here, so we get gain rage on melee hit. And this is also another way to sustain our rage cost throughout mapping and bossing. So we also get this. Every 10 rage grants us 12% increased physical damage. Grab the jewel socket all the way up here. We go down to the left, we grab all the good nodes here, basically for more skill speed and crit chance. Also gain 8% of damage as extra cold while shapeshifted. Down here for another jewel socket. Here we get rage on a melee hit, we get maximum rage. Go down here for some increased crit chance and crit damage. and increased mana cost of skills, which doesn't really do that much for us since we have such a good leech going. We go up here, increased damage while shapeshifted, increased physical damage, skill speed. Then we go up here, so we get rage when we get hit by an enemy. But most importantly, mystical rage, which I mentioned in the intro. So every rage also grants us 2% increased spell damage. We go all the way up here, grab a jewel socket. All the way over here, a little bit of increased max energy shield. Down here, jewel socket. We go here and path out, so we get increased cold damage, we get increased freeze buildup, and we get hits ignore non-negative elemental resistances of frozen enemies. We also get increased freeze buildup here, and 50% increased damage with hits against frozen enemies. And here we grab all the crit chance nodes. We go down, we path down to the left, grab another jewel socket. We go up here for all the good crit damage and crit chance nodes over here. We also go down here, so increase spell damage while wielding a melee weapon on all of those. Why do we do that? Well, all the increases to spell damage that we get is gonna get applied to attack damage as well through Crown of Ice. So those three are pretty good. Down here we grab Throat Seeker for increased crit damage bonus. All the way down here for another jewel socket. And then we finish off to the right here for some even more crit chance and crit damage. So that's it for the passive tree. We can take a look at the jewels. So for the regular sapphire jewels, I would go for increased crit damage bonus, and specifically crit damage bonus, not spell damage bonus. And why is that? Well, crit damage bonus applies to both your attacks and spells, while increased crit damage bonus for spells is, as it sounds, only for spells. We have increased freeze buildup, increased AoE, and increased elemental damage. So I would say something like this would be like the optimal way to go for regular sapphires. We go down here, we get another one, and here we have crit chance, crit damage bonus, and increased AoE. I would honestly consider replacing this myself, but it works pretty good for what the build actually do and what it is. So it's not needed to replace it, but I would rather have something similar to this one up here. Here we go for a Megalomaniac. And what do we have here? We have climate change. This is going to give us 20% increased freeze buildup. We gain 25% of cold damage as extra fire damage against frozen enemies. We also have Urgent Call. So we recover 2% of max life and mana when we use a Warcry, which is our Lunar Blessing and our Ferocious Roar. We also get increased Warcry speed and Warcry cooldown recovery rate. So this Megalomaniac is pretty good. I wouldn't say it's mandatory for the build. You can skip this if you don't find it or don't want to buy it. But if you can get your hands on it, it's pretty damn good. And then we go over here. And this one is really interesting, because this synergizes very well with the Defiance of Destiny amulet. So what does this one do? This is a tribute to Amanamu. So whenever you get a notable here, when taking damage from hits, 20% of life loss is prevented, then 150% of life loss prevented this way is lost over 4 seconds. So whenever you looked at the showcase of the Defiance of Destiny, you see that we actually lose all our life. And then we have like a dark red life bar. And that is actually the Amanamu jewel, helping us staying alive even though we actually lost all our life. So the interaction between this jewel and Defiance of Destiny is really good for survivability when it comes to these smaller hits and continuously from all around us basically. Once again, it's not going to help us survive from bigger hits, like one-shots basically. And over here, we use a Heart of the Well. And for this one, you would want to get something similar to this. So we have a double gain here. Gain as extra fire, extra lightning. The extra lightning is pretty important because this is enough to make our enemies get shocked, which is going to be another 20% increased damage taken. We went for increased critical damage bonus, which applies to both spells and attacks. And then we have a small amount of increased critical spell damage bonus, and this is obviously only applying to spells. And then all the way down here we have another jewel that I'm not that satisfied with. Increased max energy shield doesn't really help us because we don't scale energy shield. But the crit damage bonus is pretty good, freeze build-up is good, and elemental damage is good. So that is basically it for the build. I hope you enjoy it, and let me know in the comments down below if you have any questions. And also want to mention that I stream on Twitch, so if you have any questions regarding this build or any of my other builds, or just want to hang out and have a good time, then stop by, say hi. And also want to thank all of you for the insane support, all the comments, views, subscribes. I appreciate that so much. You don't even imagine how much it feels like. It feels so good to see all of you enjoying the content. So if you haven't already, subscribe for more. Thanks, and see you next time.